welcome to this Thursday edition of Good News York and a very special edition. Mike Brindisi here with you, flying solo. Matt's not in office today. He's way too tired from walking around the fair yesterday. Too much fried dough, but he will be in later. The reason I am excited and why this is such a special episode is I am bringing on somebody who is a very important person in my life. She's a doctor. She is somebody who has changed my life in such a positive way in regards to mental health. And I have been wanting to get her on for some time now because I've always said that if I had any sort of platform, big, medium, or small, I would always use it to promote mental health awareness and everything that comes along with it. And I've lived by that. For those of you that have watched or listened to the show so far, know that we've had many mental health professionals on. But my next guest is this is next level. She's on the verge of cutting edge testing and protocols that really, again, have changed my life. And I'm so excited to welcome her on. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jennifer Schiavi.
Thank you.
You know,
actually, it is a nurse practitioner, but thank you.
Okay, nurse practitioner. You're still a doctor to me.
A lot of the same things, yeah.
And I've never even asked you that as long as I've known you and worked with you. It is Schiavi, right? Is that the correct pronunciation?
It's technically Schiavi, but if you say it in Italian, it's Schiavi.
Okay, and I'm Italian, so there we go. Sure. Listen, welcome to Good News York, sponsored by Ads on the Go. GetAdsOnTheGo.com. I'm so glad you are here. I really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy. This is the first time I'm actually seeing you, and we're not going to talk about, my issues. I want to talk about your background and what it is you do, because it is really, really groundbreaking. And just tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got to where you are today.
So I'm a board-certified family nurse practitioner, and I've been in the whole medical field for over 12 years now. And when my daughter was born, I decided to go out and do my own thing about 3 years ago and get a functional medicine certificate. And if you're not familiar with what functional medicine is, it's a whole different way of approaching mental health or any conditions in general, looking more towards root causes of what's going on in the body. Like we're going to talk about, going into DNA and minerals and heavy metals. And so really opens up this ability to treat somebody in a more holistic way. And then I received specialized training through Dr. Yasko, which is the Yasko protocol, which is nutrigenomics. And so that's basically the basis of how I do everything with patients.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, we the way that you and I met was it's funny. I'm not somebody that gets personal, right? Like, obviously, people who know me know that Mike is an open book. He's outgoing. He talks about everything. But honestly, when it comes to like my personal stuff, my family, my health, my home, I kind of like to keep that private. But because of what I talked about earlier and wanting to, raise awareness on mental health and what it is you do, I've kind of been vulnerable and been talking about my struggles. And that's what I'm going to do today for the sake of helping others. I have struggled with mental health since I was 17 years old when I had my first panic attack, and I had a lot of childhood trauma, which you and I have talked about. I've been in and out of therapy for over, 10, 15 years. And, with that, I've made a lot of progress, but along the way, you got to remember life keeps happening and other things happen. And so just when I've made progress, sometimes I'd get knocked back down. And there were times where I felt really, really hopeless. Like there was no way out. And I was going through a rough time. And my mother-in-law and my father-in-law were going to take the Cornell bus down to the city for Christmas, the Rockefeller tree and all that. And they knew what I was going through. And I got a text message from her with a picture of your flyer. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically it was a picture of you, and it said, "Are you struggling with anxiety, depression, ADHD, having trouble studying? it was catered towards the students because it was on Cornell campus, but you made it clear it was for everybody, and your number was on there. And so I was struggling so badly. I was very thankful to my mother-in-law. I gave you a call, and I learned exactly what it is that you do. And why don't you talk about that a little bit? I mean, you did mention it a little bit in your intro there, but kind of talk about what it is you do with a client. I know everybody's a little bit different because everybody has different issues, but kind of what is your process and what are some of the things you do?
So we first start out looking at, there's 3 top tests that I like to do. So number 1 is a DNA methylation test. So it's going to look at 30 genes, and DNA methylation is really essential for the production of neurotransmitters, but also for your body's ability to detox. So then we look at a hair mineral analysis, and that's going to look at all the minerals that you essentially need as cofactors to produce these neurotransmitters and for your body's ability to detox. And we also look at heavy metals. The big thing about heavy metals is many people might say, there's no way I could possibly have heavy metals. I eat organic. But it is in our soil, it's in our air, in our pollution. We're getting the wildfire smokes, we're getting lead, we're getting cadmium. It's everywhere. So I feel like really nobody doesn't have anything, especially as you get older. Our bodies love to store heavy metals in our deep tissues. And we know that mercury is neurotoxic. We know that lead is neurotoxic. We know that nickel can cause inflammation, and inflammation in the body ultimately causes many diseases. So the other component is urine amino acid testing, and it really looks like at the byproducts of neurotransmitters. How are you breaking them down? Do you have a problem making them? Do you have a problem converting them? And so having those top 3 pieces can really give a good indicator of where do we start when we look at the supplements. So part of nutrigenomics is saying, how can we use nutrition and supplements to essentially bypass these genetic mutations and get things working the way they should? So part of, the holistic approach too is not just what's going on at this level, but sort of like how you mentioned earlier, reaching out to other people, doing any kind of therapy. So it's really just a part of that whole person approach.
Yeah, and it's so different, but so groundbreaking because these are things that you don't normally hear about when going to somebody, maybe like a licensed talk therapist or to your primary doctor. What I love about you is you always say, hey, in addition to what we're doing here, I think talk therapy is important and you should keep going to that. I think everybody should know that talk therapy always complements, and vice versa. This complements the talk therapy. Specifically, 3 things that we did, like you just talked about, was the DNA testing, the hair testing, the stool testing, which was god-awful. But what I love about this is, and you've heard about it more lately, is when we think about what with ADHD and anxiety and depression, it's all in the mind, but we're learning that there's a huge body and mind connection. And I think that's a lot of what's going on with the testing you're doing. The first thing that we did, we had met, I kind of told you my background, a little bit of talk therapy to get a base of what we were doing. And you brought up these tests, and we started by saying, okay, let's find out what's going on inside your body genetically, chemically, and then let's usher in some of these holistic supplements to see if we can, boost those chemicals or counteract whatever's going on. And then we're going to test you not only for what kind of medication, but actually the brand name mental health medication that will either work for you, that it might work for you, but you won't feel the full effects, or you should stay away from because it'll actually do the opposite, which is mind-blowing. And so kind of the plan that you and I have been on is, let's find out what's going on chemically, let's try to fix that, and then we're going to either take you off of your medicine, dial you in on a different medicine, or get you off the medicine altogether. It all depends on how it goes. So I took the first DNA test, and I was blown away when you and I went over the results. Can you talk a little bit about what that test shows?
So that test would be the GeneSight test, and that one does have medications on it. So you're right, it has the green category of these meds might work best for you, and then The yellow is gene-drug interactions, so maybe higher or lower doses. If you smoke marijuana or cigarettes or nicotine, that might impact the metabolism of the medication. Or red is you might have pretty nasty side effects. We should probably try to stay away from these medications. So that has antidepressants, antipsychotics, anxiolytics, so things for anxiety or sleep. It has stimulants and non-stimulants in there, but it does have 2 DNA methylation genes, which is a great place for people to start if they don't want to dive deep into that 30 gene panel, because that one is expensive. But it has the MTHFR gene and the COMT gene. So MTHFR is becoming a little bit more widely known right now, but there are 2 different ones. There's A1298C and there's a C677T. So you can either have a mutation at one spot or both spots on that gene, and that can really impact neurotransmitter production. So dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and it has been evidence is showing that it's linked to ADHD and depression and anxiety. The COMT gene, they specifically test for VAL-MET or the 158 gene. And so that one's really responsible for maintaining dopamine levels. And so there's also evidence for that looking at mental health too. So insurance companies are a little more on board with covering that test because those 2 have the most evidence behind them. But really, when you look at the separate full 30 DNA methylation pathway analysis, we've been looking at those since early 1990s. We've turned the coin of nutrigenomics to do all of that. So even though it feels so cutting edge and new, it's really been around. I think part of it is just getting the insurances to say, hey, look, this is really helpful for people. But yeah, the Gene Site is a great place to start.
Yeah, it's been absolutely mind-blowing. The first thing we talked about, as I just mentioned, was not only were you telling me what kinds of medicine might not work for me, we're going by brand name. I mean, that's how specific this test is. The other part that really blew my mind and changed my life was talking about those gene mutations. And actually, in the other test, the DNA test, where we looked at the gene mutations and we went over that. And you were able to see, and you want to talk about, I'm getting as personal as I can for the sake of helping others. We found out that I had a gene mutation, and the way you explained it was amazing. And this is why I wanted to have you on, because for years, you would go to a primary doctor, you'd say, I'm feeling depressed. And 9 out of 10 would go, okay, here's some Prozac or here's some Lexapro. Because at the time, that's, all that was really offered. That was the answer. Now, with what you're doing and others are doing, is we were able to see that I had a double gene mutation to where you explained it as, imagine you're a bathtub and your serotonin is not only is it not coming out like it should, it's dripping out, but on top of it, the drain is open and it's not holding it. And I was like, and we were able to make moves based on that. I mean, that's how detailed these tests are. And, when you talk about mental health, it does matter SSRIs or MAOI or whatever they're called, inhibitors. And do you need a boost in serotonin? Do you need dopamine? We used to just throw stuff at the wall and hope it works. And now you're able to just kind of to see exactly what that is. And it is absolutely mind-blowing. Let's talk also about some of the other tests that you offer and that you do along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you look at the hair mineral analysis test, you're really looking at a lot of minerals that you need for the production of neurotransmitters. So it's not just about the genes, but those genes need minerals so they can do what they're supposed to do. And so you're also looking at, we talked a little bit about heavy metals and how those are impacting DNA methylation. But essentially, it's easier to talk about an example too. Like, say someone has an A129AC, like say they have a double gene mutation and they might have trouble getting rid of certain heavy metals. And so those are backing up in the system. The pathways are closed off, and then you get more and more cumulative effects over time. So there's ways to help essentially detox people with that. Certain gene mutations, when you do it for a while, you start to see these connections. So your body has a higher demand for certain minerals. So say somebody has an MTRR gene mutation. They might need more molybdenum. And so you might consistently see molybdenum low on hair mineral analysis. So sometimes if I start with a hair mineral analysis, I can say, oh, okay, we've got these different mineral imbalances. I bet they have this type of gene mutation going on.
Perfect. Yeah. And, another thing I'm blown away with is, obviously everything is so in depth, but you mentioned holistic approach. And, for those out there that maybe aren't educated in this field or, haven't, really read up on what all these things mean, might hear holistic and might think, oh boy, it's hippy dippy. It's, we're going to use your energy and things like that. And it's not that at all. The holistic approach involves a lot of supplements, or not a lot of supplements, but involves supplements that, based on these DNA tests, you and I went over the results, and you said, I think you should, let's put you on A, B, C, D for 3 months, and then we're going to retest and see if those gene mutations or those chemical levels are up to where they are, and then from there, we'll know which of these you need to stay on long term or maybe be off forever, and then we'll attack the actual medication part of it and figure out, do you need to stay on the medication you're on? Do you want to adjust that medication, or do you want to go off? It's a very long process, a lot of process of elimination. It's very thorough, which I think is very important in the mental health field. With that said, can you talk about a little bit about some of the supplements and what, how you found them, what it is, just a little bit about those in general?
Yeah, so it's easy to talk about an example, I would say. So say an antidepressant, the idea is to increase dopamine or serotonin. And so if someone has, back to MTHFR, because it's the easiest one to talk about, but if they have a double gene mutation, A1298C, that can really lower BH4, and your body needs to take certain cofactors, or say the easiest one to think about is tryptophan, right? We get that from turkey, but we actually need that to make serotonin, but we need BH4 to make that. And so when you have that gene mutation, that can be really hard for your body to do. So it takes it a step further than the antidepressant.
Yeah.
That helps.
It's amazing. And, I'm on this regimen of these supplements in addition to the medication that I've been taking. And, another part of that is you're very thorough in this will not, interfere or counteract the medicine you're on. The process is very in-depth and very, in tune with each individual client. I have to ask, what inspired you to take this approach? That's what amazed me about you in the beginning was not only were you somebody who was able to provide this kind of care and specialized, detailed care in mental health, but that, there was a lot of ways you could have went in your career, and you decided, I not only want to work with mental health, I want to specialize in that. Did something, was it a personal thing that happened to you, or is it just your will to want to help?
Yeah, so it was really a personal story. My whole life I've had chronic fatigue. I never could get out of bed in the morning. I never wanted to go to school. I had really good grades, but I worked so much harder than everybody else. I have this picture that I look at all the time of when I was younger. I had just these dark circles around my eyes. I had so many allergies. And I always just wanted to know the reason why. I always wanted to go deeper, and I never wanted to. There's a time and a place to take medications, but I always wanted to do sort of a natural, route to healing. And so as I got older, it just seemed to pile up. And then I was pregnant. I had terrible tachycardia when I was pregnant, so I could barely do anything. I had to go out maternity leave early. After I had my daughter, I was so depleted. I'm sure because of the gene mutations that I have over 11, that I just could not focus. I could barely do anything. My body was depleted from minerals. And so that was really a lot of the start of getting into the genetics and the minerals and the heavy metals. My husband has ADHD, and so that was part of me starting my own business of, okay, how can I also help him, help us together so we can just live a really good life together and just feel good and have energy and be happy together. And so, yeah, it's been a long process, but that was,
Well,
yeah, my
listen, I mean,
journey.
I don't know if I believe in a God. I guess I'm spiritual. If there is a God, I feel like you're certainly doing God's work. I mean, anybody who's struggling with mental health knows that any beacon of hope, because sometimes it does feel hopeless. I've struggled with ADHD my whole life. I'm an 80s and 90s kid. Back then, it was like, oh, he's a disruption. Get him out of class or throw some Ritalin at him. People think I found that, you hear ADHD and the big joke is squirrel, you can't focus. And of course, that's an obvious symptom. But people also aren't always aware of emotional dysregulation, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. There's a lot that comes with ADHD that isn't just about focus. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that people don't know about ADHD, or maybe it's a misconception?
Sure. Well, I mean, one of them is with females too. They go undiagnosed. There's studies showing that they go undiagnosed longer because they don't have that hyperactivity component. So in school, they might be more of the daydreamer, can't focus. So they're not the ones that are, up and running around. So that's definitely a lot of it. But yeah, the emotional regulation, the aggression component to it as well. I mean, there's tons of research showing that red dye or any dyes in general in food can contribute to that. So that's a big component. You talked a little bit about gut health. So 90% of your serotonin receptors are in your gut, 50% of your dopamine receptors are in your gut. We are sort of in this health crisis where our children's guts are off as well. So there's actually something called HPA, and it inhibits the conversion. I'm getting super scientific, but it inhibits the conversion of dopamine to norepinephrine. And it is essentially this gut bug that creates this. So it's not, gut testing isn't usually in my top 3 initially because some genetic mutations can impair the intestinal permeability, aka, leaky gut, like if you have an MTRR11 gene mutation. But certainly any imbalance in the gut can contribute to just overall body inflammation as well.
Yeah, I do have gut issues, and I've always, is it the mental health component that caused the stomach, or is it the stomach issues that are causing the? But there is such a huge link between mind and gut, and that's a little more mainstream now. A few more questions. I know you're busy. What differentiates what you're doing and how you're approaching mental health treatment as opposed to if you were to go to a primary or maybe just a therapist? Because I truly believe, and no disrespect to primary doctors, I love my primary doctor. I don't believe that primary doctors, I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to prescribe medication, but I think there should be way more of a process before we just throw mental health medication out at people. That's what happened to me, not with my current primary, a different doctor, where they kind of just threw it at me. And to no fault to them, I mean, that's kind of how it was. But now that I've been working with you, I see how much you really have to figure out before you really want to just put people on medication. What differentiates you from I guess, the mainstream way of kind of treating any sort of mental health problems?
Yeah, well, first of all, a lot of times, and it's not the provider's fault, but there's just so much urgency in visits, is that a big piece that can be checked for is labs, just basic labs too. Iron's really important for dopamine. Vitamin D is important for serotonin. Really checking vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is a crucial part of all DNA methylation and psychological functioning. And so asking people, do you eat red meat? And if so, how often do you eat red meat? Are you just eating it once a week? That might not be sufficient enough. And so that's part of what I also do is blood work. But in a functional medicine lens, also looking a little bit differently at blood work. Say somebody is literally 1 point off from where their iron store should be. Conventional medicine might say, oh, that's fine. But for someone to feel their best, to have that optimal dopamine production, they might need that, closer to the higher end of what we're considering normal. So many lab results just have this huge range of what we say is normal. So that's that's a very crucial part of looking at everything. But I think the other component is when you go to medical school or nurse practitioner school, you do learn the anatomy and physiology of the body. You learn all these critical minerals and vitamins that are needed for the body to function. But then when you get into actual practice, it's just 15-minute visits and how are you feeling? Here's your medication and, see you in a month. And so being able to do DNA testing, minerals, how are you making your neurotransmitters, really looking at all of that, I think ultimately really can make a huge difference for people.
Yeah, that's so well said, Doc, because I think you said it better than I did, which is, again, it's nothing against primary doctors. They're obviously very capable of handling this kind of treatment. It's the time and the amount of patients that they see that they're just not able to be this thorough. And I think that's why it feels like what you're doing is God's work, because you're able to, you and I have been working together over a year now, and we have this long-term plan, and we're taking each step, and it's a long process, but it's so thorough, and you have to be so thorough when it comes to your body and mind, especially your mind. I do know that, obviously the tests that we've been taking, I've talked about, we're looking so in depth with, it's able to tell me brand name, mental health medication that I should or should not take. We're looking at gene mutations. And I talked about how I'm like a bathtub and the serotonin isn't holding. It is so in depth. It's 2025. How much more in depth do you think we're going to get in the next 10 to 15 years? Will there ever be a time, I don't know, where we can scan the brain and see the thoughts you're having? I know it sounds crazy, but the world's rapidly changing. Is there anything on your radar where something's around the corner that's like really exciting and new?
Well, I'm just hopeful that more and more insurances will consider, covering the rest of the full DNA methylation panel and not just the medications and those 2 DNA genes, because they are starting to recognize that. And, even you can look up and see who's registered to do GeneSight, but you also have to be careful because providers need to have the right training to know what supplements to recommend for those 2 different gene mutations. But where was I going with this?
You know what's great? This is awesome. This is another symptom of ADHD. You just kind of forget things. Welcome to my world. It's fine. I think the insurance company component of it is really the thing that hinges all of it, because I see so many times, not even with mental health, just with health in general. Friends, family, I know that say, man, I'm sick or I've got this issue, but I'm not going because I can't afford it. That to me is insane. Basic health care is a human right and a need. It's not a luxury. And that's a whole other issue that we don't need to talk about now. But, I have experienced it with you where there are times where, yes, my insurance company is covering things, but I am paying out of pocket. And as excited as I am to share this with the public, I'm sure there's going to be people listening who are saying, yeah, Dr. Jennifer Schiavi sounds great, but I can't pay. I don't have health insurance or I can't afford it. And that really is what I think is kind of delaying us and accelerating what it is that you do. I think it would be more mainstream if insurance companies were able to say, hey, this is clearly a worldwide issue and we need to get a handle on it, because if we have a handle on our mental health, we have a better handle on our society. Before we go, I obviously want to plug your practice and what it is you do. If somebody is now, I want to make sure you deal with patients who are struggling with not just ADHD, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So it's anxiety, depression, ADHD, any sort of mental health issues?
Yep. Insomnia is another big one.
Insomnia, great. And where can they find you? If anybody's struggling with any sort of mental health struggle, you are located in Ithaca where I live, but you do telehealth, which is amazing, because now no matter where we are, you're still there to help. Let somebody know who's struggling with mental health where they can find you.
So yeah, IthacaADHD.com is a great place to start. There's, a description of all the different treatment options I offer. If someone is thinking about What treatment plan should I do? They can just book a free discovery call. And if finances are concerned, then typically we just go over, where do we start? What can we get covered by insurance first? I do that all the time with patients. I do have another website that is sort of just solely based on functional medicine. It's called MyFunctional, and it's fix.com, Fix, My Functional Fix, which sort of goes a little bit deeper into the DNA and the hair and the urine testing as well.
Awesome. Dr. Schiavi, you're amazing. I can't sing your praises enough because of everything you just talked about. I've struggled with mental health my entire life. It's what you do. You can't put a price on because your sanity, your mental health, your well-being is everything. And you've given me back a quality of life, and we're still working. We're still getting towards the goal. But I am much better as a father, a husband, employee, a performer, all of it because of you. And I know it sounds dramatic, but if anyone is struggling with mental health, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Don't hesitate to reach out to Dr. Schiavi for more than just what it is that she does. You heard, as you said, you work so closely with them and making sure the finances are in order first. So it's not like they're going to call and then you're going to slap them with a bill. That's a lot of times a huge worry for people. You're so thorough and you're so well thought out along the whole process, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you for giving me your time. Anything else you want to say before we go? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to talk about?
Well, thank you for sharing your story. And I feel like it's taken me a while in my own journey, but being able to be confident in the protocol that I follow and going through these things myself and taking supplements myself that I recommend to other people, I feel like that really helps too, because I want to say, hey, I don't want to say you should do this thing when I haven't done it, right? Like I want to show that I'm taking care of myself so I can also be able to help take care of other people too.
You're amazing. You are absolutely amazing. Dr. Schiavi, Ithaca ADHD. Let me try that again. IthacaADHD.com. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, whether it be anxiety, depression, ADHD, depression, even insomnia, please look up Dr. Schiavi. She's an amazing nurse practitioner, but also an amazing person. Thank you so much, and I will be talking to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. And with that, another episode of Good News York, sponsored by Ads on the Go. GetAdsOnTheGo.com. I want to thank again the great Dr. Jennifer Schiavi out of Ithaca, New York. IthacaADHD.com. Please, it is worth it. I promise. It changed my life, and she can change yours. There is an answer. There's always an answer. It's never too late. And with that, we will see you next week.